A single speck of gray dust rests on a cracked, dry palm. A violent wall of wind blots out the afternoon sun. Midori is on her knees in the barren dirt, coughing, shielding one fragile cherry sapling with her trembling body. We collapse under our massive modern dreams because we try to build the mountain all at once. We burn out because the goal feels endless. But a storm is not stopped by a giant stone wall. It is broken by a forest grown 3 leaves at a time. Midori is alone in the gray waste, with a basket of tiny green shoots. Midori was a young herbalist with a deep, quiet calm in her chest. She stood at the edge of the northern valley, watching the gray dust roll over the dead soil. The village was fading. Every year, the dry winds from the northern plains blew toxic sand into the streets, making the children and elders sick. The community was losing hope. Midori looked at the vast, empty throat of the valley and made a silent vow. She would plant a defensive wall of hardy mountain cherry trees across the entire opening to block the sandstorms. When she shared her plan, the villagers laughed. To them, the valley was endless, a giant monster that could not be tamed. Planting trees seemed like an impossible joke. "You are trying to empty the ocean with a tiny seashell," an old man told her. But Midori did not argue. She knew she could not plant a whole forest in one day. Instead, she chose a small, manageable commitment. She promised herself to plant and mulch exactly 3 saplings every single morning, rain or shine. Every morning, before the sun touched the mountains, Midori walked out into the cold, gray waste. She dug 3 precise holes, placed the fragile roots into the dry earth, and covered them with care. For the first few months, her work was completely invisible. The vast landscape made her efforts look tiny and meaningless. Then, the sky itself turned against her. A brutal, historic summer drought struck the region. The small mountain stream, which she used to water the young plants, completely dried up into cracked, hard clay. The blazing sun baked the earth, and the young saplings began to droop, their leaves turning a sickly brown. Midori felt a sharp knot of anxiety in her stomach. Her daily labor suddenly doubled. To keep her trees alive, she had to carry 2 heavy wooden buckets of water on her back from a distant river, miles away across rocky terrain. Her shoulders blistered and bled under the heavy wooden yoke. Her throat burned with the very dust she fought. Her mind screamed that the skeptics were right. By the 4th week of the drought, Midori collapsed onto the parched, burning earth. She was utterly exhausted, her body shaking with fatigue. She stared at the endless gray sand, feeling completely defeated. But as she lay near the ground, her eyes caught something small. Beneath a jagged stone, a tiny patch of wild mountain grass was perfectly green. It was thriving in the desert. She leaned closer and noticed that the shape of the stone gathered the thick morning mist, creating tiny drops of dew that fed the grass. This was the revelation she needed. She realized she did not need to carry the entire river on her aching back. She needed to understand and copy the hidden patterns of the valley. Midori changed her strategy entirely. Every day, after planting her 3 saplings, she traveled up the cliffs to gather seeds of that specific wild mountain grass. She planted a thick ring of grass around the base of every single tree. The grass formed a natural protective blanket that trapped the morning moisture and kept the soil cool. The small adaptation worked wonders. Her daily water labor was cut in half, allowing her to maintain her steady rhythm. 5 years passed, then 8, then 10. Her tiny saplings gradually transformed into young, sturdy trees with deep roots. The long, thin line of green began to stretch across the throat of the valley. Birds returned first, weaving small nests in the young branches. Then, children came to play in the thin shade, breathing air that no longer tasted of dust. The villagers who had stayed stopped laughing, though they still doubted the forest could truly stop a real storm. A few of them quietly began to help, carrying grass seeds in their sleeves. Midori's hands grew rough and strong, and the first gray threads appeared in her dark hair. She simply kept digging her 3 holes every morning, focusing only on the soil beneath her hands. Then, in her 10th year, the horizon turned black at noon. A legendary black blizzard, the most violent sandstorm in 50 years, roared out of the northern plains. The wind howled like a furious beast, carrying a massive wall of dark, toxic dust that blotted out the sun completely, turning noon into pitch black midnight. The remaining villagers panicked, packing their few belongings to flee down the valley. They begged Midori to run with them. "The desert is coming to bury us all," they cried. Midori refused to move. She walked out to the edge of her young green wall as the terrifying gale hit the valley. The branches of her cherry trees groaned loudly, and thousands of leaves were torn away into the dark sky. She stood in the roaring wind, her heart pounding against her ribs, holding onto a trunk for support. Everything she was had gone into these roots. 10 years of silent, daily devotion were now put on trial against the raw, destructive fury of nature. If the roots failed, her entire existence would be buried under mountains of ash. But the roots did not fail. Because these trees had been grown slowly through drought and hardship, their root systems were incredibly deep and tough. Beneath the surface of the earth, the roots of the thousands of trees had interlocked, forming a massive, unbreakable wooden net. The forest wall caught the storm. It absorbed the violent energy of the wind, forcing the toxic sand to drop harmlessly outside the green boundary. On Midori's side of the wall, the air remained completely still, safe and clear. This ancient tale reveals a profound truth about our modern lives. We live in a fast world that is obsessed with sudden, massive leaps. We want the masterpiece immediately, without the patience for daily brushstrokes. This is why we burn out. But true power follows the law of Wu Wei, the ancient Taoist wisdom of aligning with the effortless flow of nature. Nature never hurries, yet nothing is left undone. The massive forest that saves a valley is built one small root at a time. Do not demand an overnight miracle. Trust the silent, unstoppable power of your daily compounding efforts. Midori stands in the center of the valley, looking up at a clear blue sky, the same valley where she once knelt in the dust, shielding one small life from the wind. She opens her calm palm in the warm sunlight. A single soft pink cherry blossom petal falls from a branch and rests on her healed, peaceful hand. What is the single small sapling you need to plant in your own life today, even if the desert before you looks completely endless? Keep seeking, keep growing, and keep shining. Subscribe to join us for the next one.